What did you think was going to happen then in terms of the expectation for how it would roll out and play out in the public?
Well, almost as it actually happened, right? I knew this was going to be
You knew that there'd be this amount of pushback?
Yes. And I think it was to be expected, and for several reasons. One is understanding the way that this is designed is not trivial. You need to invest a little bit of time to really look into the separation between the Libre Association, which we don't control anymore, Libra, the wallet that is a subsidiary of Facebook itself, and also the fact that this was designed more to operate as a payment system to enable people to have access to modern financial services and digital money, not really, as a thing to take over the world and control.
Do you think if you had said on day one that this really is a payment system, a payment platform, and not a new currency, and maybe this is just language here, that would have changed the dynamic with which we all have thought about it and the way politicians have?
I think it probably would have, and in thinking about what I would have done differently if I could go back again, I would have definitely emphasized the value of creating new infrastructure to move money around the world for the very people who need it the most. It's true that the nature of talking about a currency, even if it's a digital currency that has no money creation whatsoever. Someone joked to me that actually a Baskin-Robbins gift card was actually, creating more new money than Libra, which is right because it's backed one for one with a reserve. But this notion of creating a new digital currency certainly has inspired a lot of people to come and talk about it.
How much do you think the critique is about the currency itself, or the platform, if you will, and how much do you think it is about Facebook? And let me just read to you. This is the Financial Times op-ed. Facebook's hubris comes at a heavy cost for Libra. Digital transformation banking is welcome, but regulators are right to argue that Facebook has yet to make the case for its own e-bucks. Is this really about Facebook? Is that what's going on here?
No, first of all, it's not Facebook's e-bucks. Second of all, I think that, yes, for sure, the fact that this started at Facebook didn't make things easier, given the times we're living in and the role that the company has and in all of the issues that we've faced and that we're dealing with right now. But the way I think about it is almost as a responsibility that we have to innovate on behalf of the very people we serve. Because the status quo of the current financial system really doesn't work for so many people. And it's a little bit, if you allow me, it's a little bit like the telecoms industry pre-internet, where we were paying $1 a minute for an international call, and suddenly the internet has enabled anyone with a $30 smartphone to make unlimited calls and video calls and text messages for free. And the same has not happened with financial services. 1.7 billion people who are unbanked, about 1 billion people who are underserved by financial services. And by the way, a key difference is actually that everyone, poor or rich, paid $1 a minute for that call, whereas financial services, the poorer you are, the more you pay.
The more aggressive it is, right. But the question then is, could have you launched this and Facebook have been a part of it and not the lead part of it? And would have that changed the dynamic?
Maybe, but I spent much more time thinking about how to address this going forward rather than reliving the movie in my head too many times. And I think, look, we have to invest the time, and when I say we here, it's not Facebook, it's really the Libre Association. We're 1 out of 21 members of it now, and many more to come.
So how much power do you now have in this Libre Association?
So we have, at the Council of Members, we have 1/21th of the voting power, and I was elected on the board, which was a very democratic process. It took 3 rounds of voting for the 5 board members to be elected when we had that council meeting, which was great to see. And so we have 1 out of 5 board seats, and we have 1 out of 21 council seats.
You've now had a number of companies drop out, and we talked a little bit to Derek Khosrowshahi at Uber, who has actually stayed in, but I'm just looking at the list: Visa, MasterCard, Stripe, eBay, and others. They received letters from a number of senators, including Sherrod Brown, And the letter said, if you take this on, you can expect a high level of scrutiny from regulators, not only on Libra-related activities, but on all payment activities. What did you think when you saw that letter go out?
That it was an interesting way to talk about innovation addressed to companies that had actually the fortitude and the courage of looking at a solution that could potentially disrupt parts of their businesses, but were still willing to take part in this innovation, which, by the way, they still want to be part of the innovation. I think once the regulatory framework...
Think that's what's happened here?
I mean, look, you have to make a decision if you're running a company, right? And if you're running a company and you have this thing, which is high beta for sure, this is a high-risk endeavor, that you're backing, and you have all this pressure mounting on your core business, you have to make a trade-off of whether you're going to take the risk full on or wait for the dust to settle and the regulatory framework to clarify to join later. And I think, I probably would have made the same decision if I were in their shoes.
How much do you think this is about the US regulator and what's going on here versus Europe? Because I think when you first got into this, that the worry wasn't actually about what might happen here, but what actually might happen in Europe, given some of the concerns they had about Facebook there.
Yeah, I think, look, I want to separate the very good constructive work that is happening with regulators and central banks around the world, with the G7 working group, with the Financial Stability Board that is going to take on the work of understanding how digital currencies and new payment systems should be regulated around the world. Those conversations are very constructive. And then, there are other conversations that are more on the lawmakers and political side of the House, and it's more complicated. But this comes with the very nature of the endeavor and the fact that it started at Facebook. And so over time, I think that look, the Libre Association is ramping up. There's a search committee that is looking for a leader. I'm definitely not going to be that person. And we're going to have someone who's going to represent all of the members as one organization, and that's going to be on the network side of the House. And then I'm going to focus on building what I hope will be one of the best wallets of many wallets that will exist on top of this network.
For those,
and I think that's when things will start also changing.
So for those uninitiated, let's just talk a little about Libra as a currency, because I think the other piece of this is that US regulators, and I've had conversations with the Treasury Secretary about this, I've seen conversations with President Trump about this, Jerome Powell, so many others. It's funny, governments, one of the last monopolies that governments truly have is on their own currency. And the idea of letting that go, I think, is very, very hard. Do you think that if you are successful, 5, 10 years from now, whatever the timeline looks like, that you will supplant the US dollar?
No.
That you will supplant other money?
No. Look, first of all, I think there are several things that are really important to understand, and this is actually how this works, because I think that'll help frame why the answer is really a firm no. So first of all, if you look at the current way that money moves cross-border, you have hardworking families that are split across two nations. You have one hardworking person on one side who actually goes with cash to a store. They're being charged, on average, 7% to move money cross-border. This is $700 billion a year. And they're handed a little receipt. They take a photo of that receipt, send it over WhatsApp or Messenger to the other side of the world, to the rest of the family. 3 days later and 7% less later, people actually walk to a cash-out location, which is generally in a high-crime area. So this is actually a risky thing. They have to wait in line hours. And they take the money out. So the way that this will be improved with a network such as Libra is that you're going to actually be able to do that right into that same conversation that you sent that photo of that paper receipt, potentially for free. But if you're banked on this side, you're going to get in and out of the Libra currency in a minute. So it's a settlement coin more than anything else when you actually experience it. So you're going to connect your debit card, and you're going to
go dollars to Libra, Libra to dollars.
And you're going to Libra to whatever currency comes on the other side, and it helps with making the transactions low cost, real time, and available to all kinds of different people who don't have access to electronic payments and digital money today.
Okay, so your competitor, Jack Dorsey, and not in the Twitter land, but now in Square land, was asked whether he would join Libra. His answer was hell no. And he said cryptocurrency wasn't necessary to make that thing work. Born out of a company's intention, not need. And that's not consistent with what I personally believe and what I want our company to stand for. What do you make of that?
Well, I mean, look, we disagree on a number of things these days, it seems. But look, I think that the current system has a lot of issues. One is it's not interoperable. So I used to run PayPal a number of years ago.
Yep.
We bought Braintree and Venmo. Today, if you wanted to do a payment between Venmo and PayPal, I believe you still can't do that. If you want to do a payment between PayPal and Square Cash, you still can't do that. There's no interoperability. It's almost as if you couldn't send an email from Gmail to Yahoo Mail, right? There's no common infrastructure to move money around the world at a low cost that is available to everyone that has a $30 smartphone. And so I think that you cannot actually make massive amounts of progress for the very people that we want to serve unless you change the core of the system that moves money around. And so I disagree that you can actually do that you can cut costs in a profound way and lower barriers of access for billions of people by leveraging the current system. Otherwise, it would have already been done.
Let me ask you a different question. The day that you launched this, the value of Bitcoin, which I know is very different than Libra, rocketed. And there was a view that if you could get these wallets, these electronic wallets in the hands of a billion people, all of a sudden it would change the dynamic for Bitcoin and all of these other cryptocurrencies. What do you make of Bitcoin as a currency? Is that something you own? Is that something that you could see being like a Libra or never?
So I don't think of Bitcoin as a currency. It's actually not a great medium of exchange because of its volatility. I see it as digital gold. So you can hold gold. Actually, it's a very popular thing to hold right now. And you can hold Bitcoin, which actually is a good corollary, digital version. Right. But it's not a good medium of exchange because the same family we talked about earlier cannot afford a 10 or 20% drop in one day when they send money across borders. People don't use a unit like digital currency of Bitcoin to pay for things just because it's so volatile. So it serves a completely different purpose. Of course, having more people having access to digital currencies will enable and give people more access to Bitcoin and other digital currencies.
Let me ask you a different question. This relates to Bitcoin because I was always surprised by the critique actually of Libra, in that there's somebody to call, right? There's an association. You can get on the phone if there's a problem. I thought a regulator would say,
you can be called to testify.
They can call you to testify.
Yeah.
They can't call Satoshi Nakamoto to testify. There's nobody to call when it comes to Bitcoin. And so the thing I've always wondered is if Bitcoin ever reached some form of escape velocity, and I don't even know what escape velocity means in this context, I would have thought that regulators would come and try to kill it very quickly. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I think that it survived for now 11 years, and it has gone through a lot. And I think that the main reason that it has not been regulated into oblivion, if you will, is really the fact that it is not perceived to be a medium of exchange. And as a result, if you look at it as a way to invest your money, and this is an investment class that is decorrelated from the rest of the market, then why feel threatened by that, right? And I think it boils down to whether it's a really good medium of exchange that hundreds of millions, billions of people are going to use or not.
So given that this currency is about trust, let's talk about trust for a second.
Sure.
In the larger context of Facebook, because I think that's what this is really all about. I mean, I think that's the cloud that hangs over this. And the thing that I'm trying to understand is, and it's really the conversation we're having with Valerie and so many other people today, this idea, and it specifically goes to disinformation, it goes to what happened to our election in 2016, it goes to what may or may not happen in the election of 2020.